Put your hands where I can see them, right now. The words cut through the quiet like a slammed door, sharp enough to make the air feel thinner, colder, as if the entire street had suddenly forgotten how to breathe. Maya Williams froze mid-step, the soft crunch of gravel under her sneakers the last sound before silence swallowed everything else. The streetlight above her flickered once, casting a pale amber glow across her face, catching the faint sheen of exhaustion in her eyes. It had been a long night, 12 hours on her feet at St. Mary's Medical Center, moving between patients, checking monitors, whispering reassurances into dim hospital rooms that smelled like antiseptic and sleeplessness. Her hoodie still carried that scent, faint but clinging, like proof of where she had been, like evidence no one here seemed interested in seeing. Across from her, the patrol car idled at an angle that blocked half the road, its headlights cutting straight through her shadow and stretching it long behind her, distorting her outline against the cracked pavement she had walked since she was a child. Officer Daniel Brooks stood beside the open driver's door, one hand resting near his belt, the other gesturing toward her with a firmness that didn't invite questions, only compliance. His uniform looked pressed, untouched by the kind of fatigue that settled into bones after a double shift, his posture straight, controlled, certain. The radio on his shoulder crackled softly, a distant voice speaking in codes and fragments, but he didn't respond. His attention stayed fixed on her, unblinking, as if she were a problem already halfway solved. Maya slowly raised her hands, not high, just enough, her fingers trembling slightly before she steadied them, forcing stillness into her own body. The cool air brushed against her skin, carrying the faint scent of cut grass from a nearby yard, the distant hum of a lawn sprinkler ticking rhythmically somewhere down the block. A porch light flicked on across the street. Curtains shifted. Someone was watching, but no one stepped outside. This was her neighborhood, 3 blocks from the small brick house where her grandmother still kept the porch. Swing painted the same chipped white it had been 20 years ago. She knew every crack in this sidewalk, every mailbox leaning slightly to the left, every tree that arched over the street like it was trying to protect something fragile underneath. And yet, standing there now, under that flickering light, with her hands raised and her breath measured, it didn't feel like hers at all. It felt borrowed, conditional, like something that could be taken back with a single wrong move. Officer Brooks took a step closer, the gravel shifting under his boot, his shadow overlapping hers, swallowing it at the edges. "I asked you a question," he said, his voice lower now, controlled, but edged with something colder than authority, something that didn't need a reason to exist. Maya swallowed, her throat dry, her voice steady when it came out, quieter than his but unshaken. "I live here." The words hung in the air between them, simple, true, and somehow not enough. For a brief second, nothing moved. The streetlight buzzed softly overhead. The sprinkler kept ticking. Somewhere in the distance, a car passed, its tires hissing against asphalt, unaware of the moment stretching thin on this quiet block. And then, just as quickly as it had frozen, the air shifted again, not with noise, not with movement, but with the subtle weight of something unseen settling into place, like a presence just beyond the edge of light, watching, waiting, and saying nothing at all. Maya kept her hands raised, but her shoulders slowly lowered a fraction, just enough to breathe without feeling like her chest might lock in place, the night air cool against her skin, grounding her in something real, while everything else felt uncertain. Up close, the details sharpened, the faint crease between Officer Brooks' brows, the way his eyes scanned her face not with curiosity but with quiet assumption, like he had already decided who she was before she ever spoke. A thin layer of dust clung to the hood of his patrol car, catching the glow of the headlights, and for a second, Maya found herself focusing on that instead of him, on something ordinary, something that did not judge. Her fingers steadied, no longer. Trembling, her palms open, visible, her breath slow and measured the way she had learned during long shifts when patients panicked, and she had to be the calm in the room. "Can I ask why you stopped me?" she said, her voice even, not challenging, not submissive, just present. The question lingered between them, soft but deliberate. Brooks let out a quiet breath through his nose, almost a scoff, and shifted his weight slightly, the faint creak of leather from his belt breaking the stillness. You matched a description, he replied, the words delivered with a rehearsed ease that sounded practiced, automatic. Maya's eyes flickered, not with fear, but with recognition, like she had heard that sentence before in different forms, in different tones, always meaning the same thing. She nodded once, slowly, absorbing it, not interrupting, not escalating. What description? She asked, and this time there was something underneath the words, not defiance, but clarity, the quiet insistence of someone who knew her own ground even if she stood alone on it. A breeze moved down the street, brushing past the leaves of an old oak tree that stood at the corner, the branches swaying gently, casting shifting shadows across the pavement. Somewhere behind her, a screen door clicked faintly, then went still again. Brooks did not answer right away. His gaze dropped briefly to her hoodie, to her worn sneakers, to the hospital badge clipped near her pocket, though it was half-turned, the name not fully visible from where he stood. His eyes lingered there for a moment, as if considering it, then lifted back to her face, unchanged. Where are you coming from? He asked instead, redirecting, controlling the pace, the direction, the narrative. Maya exhaled quietly, the sound barely audible, but enough to steady herself again. Work, she said. I just got off a 12-hour shift. The words felt heavier than they sounded, carrying the weight of everything she had done that night, every patient she had checked on, every quiet moment she had held space for someone else's pain. For a brief second, something flickered across Brooks' expression, not quite doubt, not quite acknowledgement, just a pause, like a thought that did not fully form. The radio crackled again, louder this time, a voice calling out a unit number that was not his. He ignored it. The streetlight buzzed overhead, steady now, casting a constant glow that flattened the edges of everything, turning the moment into something suspended, almost unreal. Maya shifted her weight slightly, careful, deliberate, her hands still visible, her posture calm, grounded in place she knew better than anyone watching from behind closed curtains. My grandmother lives 3 houses down, she added, her voice softer now, not to persuade, but to state something that mattered, something rooted. I have been walking this block since I was a kid. The words settled into the space between them, not loud, not forceful, but steady, like something that could not be erased just because someone chose not to see it. And for a moment either of them moved, the night holding its breath again, waiting to see which version of the truth would be allowed to stand. Officer Brooks tilted his head slightly, as if weighing her words not for truth, but for usefulness, his gaze narrowing just enough to suggest that whatever she said next would not change the direction he had already chosen. The hum of the patrol car engine filled the quiet, low and constant, like a presence pressing in from behind him. He took another step forward, closing the distance by a few feet, not rushing, not aggressive, just deliberate, the kind of movement that made the space feel smaller without ever needing to say so. Then you should not have a problem showing identification, he said, his tone even, but firmer now, the earlier pause gone, replaced with something more settled, more certain. Maya's eyes flickered for a moment, not away, but inward, as if she was choosing carefully how to respond, balancing truth with caution in a situation that did not offer much room for either. Her hands remained raised, steady, her fingers relaxed now, no longer trembling, her breathing slow and controlled. She shifted her weight slightly, the gravel beneath her shoes giving a soft crunch that echoed louder than it should have in the quiet street. My ID is in my bag, she said, nodding toward the worn canvas tote slung across her shoulder, the strap pressed against her hoodie. I can reach for it if you want me to. The words were simple, cooperative, but they carried a careful precision, every syllable placed with intention, leaving no room for misunderstanding. Brooks' eyes followed the motion of her head toward the bag, then returned to her face, scanning again, calculating. For a brief second, his jaw tightened, a subtle shift that hinted at something beneath the surface, something less about procedure and more about control. Slowly, he said, after a beat, his voice lower now, quieter, but more commanding, as if the volume itself carried authority. Maya nodded once, barely, acknowledging, and then paused again, holding still for a moment longer than necessary, as if reminding both of them that she was not moving until he allowed it. The streetlight above them buzzed faintly, steady now, its glow casting long shadows that stretched across the pavement and blurred the edges of everything they touched. In one of those shadows, just beyond the reach of the headlights, a dark silhouette shifted almost imperceptibly, the outline of a parked vehicle tucked along the curb, its presence subtle, easy to overlook unless someone was already looking for it. Maya inhaled quietly, then began to lower one hand slow enough that the movement felt almost suspended in time, her fingers brushing against the strap of her bag before slipping inside. The fabric rustled softly, a small, ordinary sound that felt amplified in the stillness. Inside, her hand moved carefully, deliberately, navigating past folded scrubs, a small notebook, a pair of gloves still tucked into their packaging, until her fingers found the edge of her wallet. She pulled it out slowly, her movements controlled, predictable, exactly as instructed. Brooks watched every motion, his posture rigid, his attention fixed, as if the act itself held more meaning than it should. "Keep your other hand where I can see it," he added, though she already had. Maya did not respond, did not point it out, she simply held her position, one hand raised, the other holding the wallet. Now, extended slightly forward but not enough to cross into his space. The quiet stretched again, thin and fragile. And from the darkness near that parked vehicle, unseen by Brooks but steady and aware, a pair of eyes followed the exchange without interruption, patient, observant, waiting for something that had not happened yet, but was already unfolding. Maya held the wallet steady in her hand, her arm extended just enough to offer it without stepping forward, the thin leather catching the streetlight as it shifted slightly with the rhythm of her breathing, slow, controlled, intentional, while her other hand remained raised, fingers open, unmoving, a quiet signal of compliance that felt heavier the longer it lasted. Officer Brooks did not reach for it right away. Instead, he let the moment stretch, his eyes fixed on her face rather than the identification she was offering, as if the real decision was not about the card at all, but about something unspoken, something already decided long before she ever turned the corner onto this block. The hum of the patrol car deepened for a second, the engine adjusting, the headlights steady, casting a hard white line across the pavement that split the space between them into two distinct halves. "Step closer," he said finally, his voice measured, leaving no room for negotiation, but also not raised, not urgent, just firm in a way that assumed it would be followed. Maya did not move immediately. The pause was brief, almost invisible, but it existed, a single breath held between instruction and action. Her eyes remained on him, steady, searching not for permission, but for clarity, as if she was mapping the safest path through a situation that did not offer one. Then she nodded once, small and controlled, and took a step forward, her shoe pressing into the gravel with a soft, deliberate crunch. The distance between them narrowed by a foot, then another, until she stood just within reach, still careful not to cross into his space more than necessary. She extended the wallet again, her arms steady, her posture upright, her shoulders squared not in defiance, but in quiet dignity. Brooks finally reached out, his hand closing around the wallet, his fingers brushing against the edge of it before pulling it away, his grip firm but not hurried. He opened it slowly, flipping it once, then again, the plastic of the ID catching the light as he angled it toward himself. His eyes scanned the card, then lifted to her, then back down again, as if looking for something that was not printed there. "Maya Williams," he read aloud, the name sounding different in his voice, less like a fact and more like a question he had not decided how to answer. Maya did not respond. She stood still, her raised hand unmoving, her breathing even, her gaze fixed somewhere just past him, not avoiding, but not engaging more than necessary. The night air moved again, a soft breeze carrying the distant scent of someone cooking late, something warm and familiar that felt out of place in a moment that had turned so cold. Brooks flipped the ID once more, then glanced toward her bag, then back to her face. "You live 3 houses down, you said?" he continued, his tone shifting slightly, less sharp, but not softer, just more deliberate. "Which one?" Maya answered without hesitation, her voice calm, grounded. "The brick house with the white porch swing. My grandmother's name is Lillian Carter." The words settled between them, specific, rooted, undeniable in their detail. Brooks held her gaze for a second longer this time, his expression tightening just slightly, as if the certainty in her answer had introduced something he had not accounted for. Behind him, just beyond the reach of the headlights, the dark silhouette of the parked vehicle remained still, its presence quiet but constant, and from within it, unseen and patient, the same watchful attention did not waver, tracking every word, every pause, every subtle shift in tone that revealed more than either of them intended to show. Officer Brooks closed the wallet with a soft snap, the sound small but final, as if it marked the end of one line of questioning and the beginning of another he had already decided to pursue. He did not hand it back right away. Instead, he held it loosely at his side, his fingers tapping once against the edge, a quiet, restless motion that did not match the stillness of the street. His eyes shifted past Maya for a brief moment, scanning the houses behind her, the dark windows, the faint outlines of curtains that had not fully closed, the subtle signs that people were watching without wanting to be seen. Then his attention returned to her, sharper now, more focused, like the pause had given him time to settle into a conclusion he felt more comfortable standing in. "You understand there have been reports in this area," he said, his voice carrying a slightly different weight, less questioning and more declarative, as if the explanation itself justified everything that had already happened. Maya's expression did not change, but something in her posture tightened just slightly, not visible unless someone was looking for it, a quiet recognition of where this was going. "What kind of reports?" she asked, her tone steady, not confrontational, but not passive either, her words placed carefully, like steps on uncertain ground. Brooks exhaled slowly, his gaze narrowing just a fraction. "Suspicious activity," he replied, the phrase vague, broad, carrying more implication than information. He shifted his stance, planting his feet a little wider, grounding himself in the authority he wore like a second skin. "People walking late. Not from around here." The words lingered, heavy with suggestion, filling the space between them with something that did not need to be said outright to be understood. Maya let the silence sit for a moment before responding, her eyes steady on his, her voice calm but carrying a quiet firmness that had not been there before. "I told you I am from here," she said. "I gave you the address. My grandmother has lived on this street for over 30 years. The specificity in her words did not rise in volume, but it deepened in weight, anchoring her presence in something real, something that could not be dismissed without effort. Brooks' jaw tightened again, more noticeably this time, his grip on the wallet shifting slightly as if he had forgotten he was still holding it. The patrol car radio crackled once more, a voice calling his name this time, clearer, closer, but he did not respond. The moment held, stretched thin between them, the air thick with something unspoken, something that pressed in from all sides. Maya lowered her raised hands slowly, not abruptly, not in defiance, but in a controlled, deliberate motion, bringing it down to her side as she remained standing exactly where she was. She did not step back. She did not step forward. She simply stood, grounded in place, her breathing steady, her eyes unwavering. "Am I being detained?" she asked, the question quiet, almost gentle, but precise, the kind of question that changed the shape of the moment the instant it was spoken. Brooks blinked once, just once, the smallest interruption in his composure, as if the word itself had shifted the balance slightly, forcing him to acknowledge something he had been avoiding naming. He did not answer immediately. Instead, he looked at her again, really looked this time, not just at her clothes or her stance, but at her face, at the steadiness in her gaze, at the absence of fear that he might have expected to see. And from the darkness beyond the headlights, still unnoticed, the silent observer remained exactly where he had been, watching the exchange unfold with quiet patience, waiting for the moment when words alone would no longer be enough to hold everything together. The question did not echo, but it settled, heavy and precise, like something placed carefully on a table that could not be ignored or brushed aside. Maya stood still after asking it, her hands now at her sides, her fingers relaxed, her posture upright but not rigid, as if she had stepped into a space where clarity mattered more than comfort. The street seemed to respond in its own quiet way. The distant sprinkler stopped with a soft click, leaving behind a deeper silence that pressed closer around them. Even the faint rustling of leaves above slowed, as if the night itself was listening. Officer Brooks did not answer right away. His gaze shifted briefly to the side, then back to her, his jaw tightening in a way that suggested calculation rather than uncertainty. The wallet was still in his hand, forgotten for a moment, its presence now secondary to the weight of the question hanging between them. "You are being asked to cooperate," he said finally, his tone controlled, carefully chosen, avoiding the directness of what she had asked. The wording lingered incomplete, circling the truth without landing on it. Maya did not move. Her eyes remained steady, not challenging, not yielding, simply present. "That is not what I asked," she replied, her voice soft but clear, each word spaced with intention, leaving no room for confusion. The calm in her tone did not rise, but it deepened, like something rooted beneath the surface, something that would not shift just because the moment had grown uncomfortable. Brooks exhaled again, slower this time, his shoulders rising slightly before settling back into place. The radio on his shoulder crackled once more, a voice calling again, sharper now, closer to insistence, but he reached up and turned the volume down without looking away from her. The small movement felt louder than it should have, like a signal that whatever was happening here mattered more than the call he was ignoring. The streetlight above them flickered once, then steadied, its glow washing over both of them equally, flattening the contrast between uniform and hoodie, between authority and exhaustion, if only for a second. Maya's breath moved quietly in her chest, steady, controlled, the same rhythm she had used countless times to ground herself when things around her felt uncertain. She did not step back. She did not step forward. She simply stood, occupying the space she had every right to stand in, her presence calm but undeniable. "If I am being detained, I need to know," she said, her voice still even, but carrying a quiet firmness that anchored the moment. "If I am not, then I would like my identification back." The words were not rushed. They were not emotional. They were precise, measured, and complete. For the first time, something in Brooks' expression shifted more visibly. Not anger, not exactly, but a flicker of something unsettled, as if the structure he had been relying on was beginning to feel less stable than it had a moment ago. He looked at the wallet in his hand, then back at her, then past her again toward the darkened houses, the unseen eyes behind glass, the quiet witnesses who would not speak but would remember. And beyond all of that, just at the edge of the scene, where shadow met the faint glow of a distant street lamp, the silhouette of that parked vehicle remained still, its presence unchanged, patient, waiting, as if it had been there long before this moment began and would remain long after it ended, holding within it a quiet awareness that had not yet revealed itself, but was drawing closer with every word left unanswered. The silence stretched just long enough to become something else, something heavier than hesitation, something that pressed against the edges of the moment until it felt like it might break. Officer Brooks shifted his weight again, the movement subtle but no longer controlled in the same way, his fingers tightening slightly around the wallet before loosening, as if he had suddenly become aware of how long he had been holding it. His eyes moved past Maya once more, scanning the street, but this time there was a flicker of something different in his expression, something less certain, less anchored in the authority he had relied on just moments ago. "You are not under arrest," he said finally, the words coming out measured, but lacking the firmness they had carried before. He paused, just a fraction too long, then added, "But I still need to verify a few things." The explanation felt thinner now, less complete, as if it had been offered more out of habit than conviction. Maya did not respond immediately. She let the words settle, her gaze steady, her posture unchanged, her presence quiet but unwavering. The streetlight above cast a soft glow across her face, highlighting the calm in her expression, the absence of panic, the quiet strength that had not wavered since the moment he first spoke to her. "Then I am not being detained," she said gently, not as a challenge, but as a conclusion drawn from his own words, her tone even, grounded, leaving little space for contradiction. Brooks opened his mouth slightly, as if to respond, but no words came out right away. The radio on his shoulder crackled again, louder this time, the voice on the other end. Sharper, calling his name with a sense of urgency that cut through the stillness. He reached up again, but this time his hand hesitated before touching the volume, his attention split for the first time since the encounter began. And then, from behind him, from the direction of the parked vehicle that had remained in shadow, came the soft, distinct sound of a door opening. It was not loud. It did not demand attention. But it carried through the quiet with a clarity that shifted everything. Brooks turned his head slightly, just enough to register it, his brows tightening as he looked toward the source of the sound. A figure stepped forward from the darkness, not hurried, not dramatic, just steady, deliberate, moving into the edge of the streetlight where the shadows thinned and details began to form. The outline sharpened into a man in plain clothes, posture straight, presence composed, his expression unreadable but focused. At his side, a K9 unit moved in sync with him, calm, controlled, its attention alert but not reactive, its presence adding weight without a single sound. The man stopped a few feet behind Brooks, close enough to be part of the moment, far enough to observe it fully before speaking. "That will not be necessary, officer," he said, his voice calm, low, but carrying a quiet authority that settled into the space with immediate effect. Brooks straightened slightly, turning more fully now, his expression shifting from control to recognition in the span of a second. "Sir?" he said, the word coming out sharper than intended, his posture adjusting instinctively. The man stepped forward just enough for the light to catch his face, revealing Jackson Hale, his gaze moving briefly from Brooks to Maya, taking in the scene with a level of clarity that felt complete, as if nothing had been missed. "I have seen enough," Jackson said simply, his tone even, but final, the kind of statement that did not require explanation to be understood. And in that moment, the balance that had held the entire encounter in place shifted completely, not with force, not with noise, but with the quiet certainty of truth stepping into the light. The shift in the air was immediate, subtle but undeniable, like a pressure that had been building finally finding a release, and for the first time since the encounter began, Officer Brooks' posture lost its rigid certainty, replaced by something more measured, more aware. His grip on the wallet loosened completely now, and he glanced down at it briefly, as if only just remembering that he was still holding it, before extending it back toward Maya without being asked. The movement was controlled, but no longer dominant, the edge in it gone. Maya accepted it quietly, her fingers brushing against the worn leather as she took it, her expression unchanged, calm, grounded, her eyes steady as she slipped it back into her bag with the same deliberate care she had shown throughout. Jackson Hale remained where he stood, his presence filling the space without effort, his gaze moving once more between Brooks and Maya, not rushed, not accusatory, but precise, as if every detail had already been observed and understood before he ever spoke. The K9 at his side stood still, alert but relaxed, its attention shifting only slightly, mirroring the calm authority of its handler. "Officer Brooks," Jackson said, his voice even, carrying just enough weight to settle into the moment without raising it. "I assume there is a clear and articulable reason for this stop." The phrasing was exact, the kind of language that did not leave room for interpretation. Brooks straightened instinctively, his shoulders pulling back, his chin lifting slightly, but the confidence that had been there earlier did not fully return. "Suspicious activity was reported in the area," he replied, his tone formal now, measured, but lacking the earlier conviction, as if the words felt thinner under the weight of scrutiny. Jackson held his gaze for a second longer than comfortable, not challenging, but unyielding in a way that required an answer to stand on its own. "And you determined that she matched that description?" he said, not as a question, but as a restatement, his eyes briefly shifting to Maya, acknowledging her presence not as an object of the situation, but as a person within it. Brooks hesitated, just slightly, the pause small, but visible. "Yes, sir," he answered, though the certainty in the word did not fully reach his eyes. The street remained quiet around them, but the silence had changed, no longer tense, no longer uncertain, now holding a different kind of weight, one that leaned toward resolution rather than escalation. A faint breeze moved through again, lifting the edge of Maya's hoodie slightly, brushing against her arms, grounding her in the moment without pulling her out of it. Jackson nodded once, slow, deliberate, as if acknowledging the answer while also measuring it against everything he had already seen. "I observed the entire interaction," he said calmly, the statement simple, but carrying a depth that shifted the balance further, making it clear that this was no longer a matter of perception, but of record. Brooks' expression tightened again, his eyes flicking briefly toward the patrol car, then back, the movement quick, almost reflexive. Jackson continued, his tone unchanged. "You were provided identification, a confirmed address, and no indication of any unlawful activity." Each point landed evenly, not forceful, but precise, building a quiet structure of fact that did not need emphasis to hold. Maya stood still, listening, her breathing steady, her presence unchanged, not inserting herself, not reacting outwardly, allowing the moment to unfold without interruption. Brooks exhaled slowly, his shoulders lowering just slightly, the tension in his stance easing, not fully gone, but no longer driving the moment forward. "Understood," he said, the word quieter now, less certain, more reflective of the shift that had taken place. Jackson held the silence for a second longer, then gave a small nod, not approval, but closure, the kind that did not need to be spoken aloud. And in that quiet exchange, without raised voices, without confrontation, the entire weight of the situation settled into place, not with force, but with clarity. The silence that followed did not feel empty anymore, it felt complete, like something that had been unsettled had finally found its place without needing to be forced there. Officer Brooks stepped back half a pace, the movement small but meaningful, creating space where there had been pressure before, his posture no longer pressing forward, no longer shaping the moment, but yielding to it. The patrol car idled behind him, its headlights still cutting across the street, but their harshness seemed to soften now, less like a barrier and more like background. He reached up and adjusted the radio on his shoulder, this time not to silence it, but to acknowledge it, his voice low as he responded briefly, the words indistinct, procedural, as if returning to something that suddenly felt more appropriate than what had just passed. When he finished, he looked back at Maya, not with the same fixed intensity as before, but with a quieter awareness, the kind that comes after something has shifted internally, even if it is not fully understood yet. "You are free to go," he said, the sentence simple, direct, and this time complete, without qualifiers, without hesitation. Maya nodded once, a small, composed acknowledgement, not triumphant, not reactive, just steady. She adjusted the strap of her bag on her shoulder, the familiar weight settling back into place, grounding her in something real and ordinary again. For a moment, she remained where she was, not rushing to leave, not lingering either, just allowing the space to settle around her in its new shape. Then she turned slightly, her gaze drifting down the street toward the house she had named, the porch light faintly glowing in the distance, the outline of the white swing barely visible but unmistakable. Her steps were measured as she began to walk, each one quiet against the pavement, the sound soft but certain, reclaiming the rhythm that had been interrupted earlier. Behind her, Jackson Hale remained still, his presence unchanged, watching not with scrutiny now, but with a calm attentiveness that felt resolved. The K9 at his side shifted slightly, its posture relaxed, its focus easing as the tension in the air dissolved. Brooks stood where he was for a moment longer, his gaze following Maya's movement down the block, his expression unreadable, but no longer rigid. He glanced once toward Jackson, a silent acknowledgement passing between them, brief and unspoken, before he turned back toward his vehicle. The engine hum continued, steady, familiar, as he moved toward the open door, the routine of his role waiting for him to step back into it. The street returned to itself slowly. A porch light clicked off. Curtains settled back into place. The faint sound of a television resumed somewhere inside one of the houses. The breeze moved again through the trees, softer now, carrying with it the quiet continuity of a neighborhood returning to its own rhythm. Maya reached the edge of the yard and paused for just a second, her hand brushing lightly against the wooden post of the fence, the texture worn but familiar beneath her fingers. She did not look back. She did not need to. The moment behind her had already settled into something that no longer required her presence to hold it. She stepped forward again, toward the porch, toward the light, her silhouette gradually blending into the quiet of the place that had always been hers. And behind her, under the steady glow of the streetlight, nothing more needed to be said for the truth of what had happened to remain.